Hello and welcome to this video. Now, if you've watched a certain movie franchise, you'll know the phrase that great power comes great responsibility. And for me, that great power would be being a sole trader, being an entrepreneur, being someone who has their own business. And that's great power. But the great responsibility we're going to talk about today is that you have to make sure that you file your tax returns in on time, otherwise you're going to incur a penalty. Well, join me today as we talk about how to make sure that you don't get a late filing fee. Stay tuned. Hello, my name is Aaron Patrick. I'm a chartered accountant, a certified UK trainer with a fancy new logo, that QuickBooks Chap on the internet, and also head of accounts here at Boffix. Now, today's topic is one of those topics no one wants to talk about, and that's the idea of having a penalty for late filing of a tax return. Now, the tax return we're going to talk about today is going to be your self-assessment tax return. And what we're trying to prevent is you having to pay out extra money to the government because you've not filed that return on time. So first of all, let's start the basics. So when do you incur a penalty? Well, you're going to incur a penalty if you fail to file that tax return before the deadline, which currently sits at the 31st of January. Now, if you think about it, the tax year ends the 6th of April and it gives you all the way to the 31st of January before you need to complete a tax return. So in theory, that should be plenty of time. But especially this year, a lot of our clients, a lot of people we talk to, a lot of people in our community have been telling us that this has been one of the most trickiest and toughest years on the planet in terms of being able to make sure that you've had that opportunity to file your tax return in on time. End of the tax year, 6th of April, all the way to the 31st of January sounds like a long time, but when you take into account what we've been through this year, it's been a very difficult landscape to be able to make sure that you've got everything done and dusted. Thankfully for this particular tax year, so the tax year that's 2021, which is due 31st of January 2022, which as the time of recording is only 2 weeks away, well, that actual deadline has been extended to the end of February. HMRC has understood that this has been a very, very peculiar year. It's been very difficult for small businesses and they have given us the opportunity to extend the deadline. But be warned, that's the extension of filing the return, not the extension of paying any taxes due. So technically that means you have to have paid, keyword there, paid your taxes by the 31st of January, but you don't need to file till the end of February, which is really difficult because unless you're absolutely brilliant at being able to guesstimate and estimate your taxes, how do you know how much you need to pay if you haven't done your tax return? But that's the logic that's happened. At least that means that you've got till the end of February until you incur a penalty. But just be warned, if you don't make payment before the 31st of January, then HMRC are going to give you interest on top of whatever the late payment's going to be. So it's going to be a bit of a difficult period for you, and it's not just as straightforward that you've got till the end of February until you need to worry about it. So, as I said in the start of this, how do you avoid those penalties in the first place? And one of the things we always talk about here is making sure that you get your tax return filed sooner rather than later. So ideally, you want to have already made that filing. In an ideal world, you've already actually submitted that tax return way back in, say, June, July, something like that. So in an ideal world, everything's already filed. And that's the sort of process you want to be getting yourself into, especially when we look forward and we take away this year that's a bit of an anomaly and we start thinking about what that MTD, that making tax digital change, means for us and small businesses. Well, that means we're going to be having to file on a quarterly basis, which means we're going to have to be much more disciplined in making sure that we get all of our returns and our tax information together on a much more real-time, regular basis. And nothing better than starting that process now. So my big tip for actually making sure that you don't have these issues going forward is to start thinking about that regular information and start putting that information into a piece of software. We would always recommend QuickBooks Online, but others are available. Xero, Sage, any of those other solutions there. And fun tip as well, if you do need a cheap version of QuickBooks Online, then don't forget to visit our e-store, and that will give you an opportunity to get some discounted rates on your QuickBooks license. Irregardless to whichever software you choose, You want to be putting information into that software on a regular basis. You want to be making sure that you're following that software's guidance in terms of getting the information in there, and then making sure that you're comfortable and confident in that the information there is correct. Once you're in that routine and you get things all up to date, things will start going much smoother for you, meaning that you can hit those dates, those deadlines, much sooner than before. So that's looking forward. That's making sure that going forward, we're not going to be in these sort of positions. If you have that software keeping up to date for you, meaning you're going to be able to complete those tax returns much quicker, meaning that you're not going to have to wait until the end of a particular period and to a deadline until you need to submit it. So that's you in your ideal position. But what can you do about it now? Well, I've got two solutions for you. The first solution is just to concentrate really on what HMRC don't know. So HMRC don't know about your self-employed income or your rental income or whatever is the reason you've had to do a tax return in the first place. So your bare minimum is to concentrate and get that information together and get it into a format that you can get submitted to HMRC nice and quickly. You see, there's lots of tricks and lots of ways in which you can get that information quickly collated so that at least you can present it on your tax return. Now, the fact that when we're talking about here is sole trader income and smaller business income means that you can afford to only provide the very bare necessities of what you need to get that tax return done. So let's make sure that we've got your income correct. As long as you're showing 12 months of income and you're collating that into that 12 month, that will be sufficient for your tax return. And then when it comes to expenses, well, let's just make sure we've got those expenses in that relate to that business. Keep it dead straightforward and simple if you're leaving it till this last minute. But again, take heed on what's going to come later. When we're into MTD and we're looking at making tax digital, you won't have the luxury of just being able to put things together in a nice, efficient manner. We're going to be having to look at systems and softwares and solutions that means that you can actually provide the information to HMRC on a more regular and also a more extensive version of that data as well. But for now, we're not in MTD. Let's utilize the opportunity. And if you just have some self-employed income or you have some rental income, let's just get the bare minimum down. Let's get it into your tax return and let's make sure it's filed before that deadline. Your second solution kind of comes without saying really. We work at Boffix. We have a whole accounts team and bookkeeping team ready and waiting to do your tax return for you. Why not drop us a bell? That way we can make sure that your tax returns and accounts should be submitted on time. And more importantly, going forward, we can make sure we can work with you so you're not leaving it to the last minute. So there's your two options. One, a bit of a cheat in terms of just getting that bare minimum data into your tax return. And number two is about letting Boffix look after your accounts going forward. Now notice that when I was talking about that cheat one, I was concentrating on the information that HMRC don't know about. So that's your self-employed income, rental income, whatever the reason that you're doing your tax return. When it comes to your income that HMRC do know about, so your self-employed income support scheme is a possibility, your P60 income if you've got another job somewhere else or you've got a main job, that sort of income or that sort of elements there, HMRC already know about it, but when you put your tax return in, they want them to match. Now, worst case scenario, if you don't have access to that P60 and that's what's holding you up, or you don't have access to, say, your self-employed income support scheme, you can't quite remember what needs to be included, the best solution you can do at this point is just put some form of estimate in there to show what that's going to be. That could be the previous year's return and figures that are on there. That could be your previous elements that you remember, but you just need to be putting something in there to say that you believe that you've received this income, and then you can submit your return. And all HMRC will do in that instance and say that you told us that you received X, we saw that you received Y, and most of the time they'll just update it to Y. They'll amend your tax return based on that. It's not pretty, and it does kind of give you an opportunity to be investigated later down the line. But if you're really struggling to get that tax return in on time, then that's how we would approach it. Let's get the information in that HMRC don't know about, that they have no indication whatsoever, and then let's try and put something in place as a best guess that we can for that other income and just allow HMRC to make amendments as they need to. Again, not perfect. Again, you want to be doing this much more efficiently going forward, but if this is the difference between you getting a late penalty and not getting a late penalty, you might be better off. And there we have it. A really practical way for you to make sure that you get your tax return in on time, you don't get that penalty, you don't get that issue, and you start thinking about going forward about how to make it easier on yourself. Let this next year be an opportunity for you to make those changes needed so that when MTD does come around in a couple of years' time, you're not going to be left as problematic and having issues going forward. You're going to be prepared, you're going to be on top of your finances, and you're going to be making sure that you are in the right side when it comes to getting things filed on time. At the end of the day, these are really difficult times. That's why we've been given that extension. It's not ideal, it's not pretty, but sometimes we just need to make sure we get a return in and we make sure we tell HMRC about all the information they don't know about and let HMRC make any amendments to what they do know about. Again, if you need any kind of clarification on this, don't be afraid to reach out. Use the comment section below. We've been answering them. In fact, our next video is all about answering questions. So it could be a perfect time for you to get some questions into us. And make sure as well that you let us know if there's anything else that you want to have on this channel about you. At the end of the day, this channel is all about you. So let us know if there's anything that we need to cover. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let's make sure that we get as many people looking into this content as possible, and then that gives us the ability to give you more content going forward. My name's been Patrick. As always, been a pleasure, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.